Remember it, and because the Monroe Doctrine from 1823,
Yeah.
which was issued by President Monroe at that time, basically said that the Western Hemisphere is the United States' sphere of influence, and we don't want Europeans coming over here to colonize it, and essentially claiming that for themselves. But because the United States military has been so tied down in the Middle East for the last few years, as we know, they've kind of started to lose a little bit of control down in Latin America, where, again, the key isn't this or that leader. The key is the masses.
Exactly.
The key is the working class. The key are the millions and millions of people that, as they say in Latin America, are saying, ya basta, enough. Enough is enough.
Yeah.
Enough of all this exploitation, enough of all this misery, enough of working so hard to receive so little when there's so much wealth within those countries. Or in the United States, the wealthy of the United States. So.
Right, exactly. And is there something hot that happened in Ecuador recently?
Well, Ecuador, there's a new president as well, Rafael Correa, who was elected, again, democratically elected.
Okay,
and he's also moving towards some of the same policies that are taking place in Venezuela and Bolivia.
Right.
They're having referendums on a new constitution there.
Wow.
And fairly recently as well, there was, I would say, first of all, in Colombia, the government of Colombia, led by Uribe is his name. This is a very right-wing, very nasty government. Very oppressive.
Militarily,
they're backed by paramilitaries. They've assassinated hundreds and even thousands of trade unionists, of peasants, of student activists, and so on. This government is the sort of the military spear point to try and destroy the Latin American Revolution, the South American Revolution in particular, Venezuela, Bolivia, and so on, Ecuador. Well, a few months ago, through Colombia, they bombed a camp of some rebels from Colombia that were in Ecuador. They went into Ecuadorian territory, bombed there, killed a bunch of people.
Bombed?
They bombed
with
them.
An airplane?
Yep, they went in and killed a whole bunch of people. And that, of course, was a big diplomatic problem.
And when you say they?
The Colombian government, the Colombian military.
Backed by the
U.S.
military.
Backed by Plan Colombia, which is
Plan Colombia,
a plan that is supposedly, it was sold to the U.S. public as an anti-drug war type funding. But it's military training, it's paramilitaries, it's murder, it's torture. I mean, it's a really, really sick plan. And they've used a wave of terror against the people of Colombia.
Yes.
But, so a lot of people had a kind of a bleak sort of view about what was happening in Colombia. But just in the last few days, really, in Colombia, there's been some serious mobilizations of peasant activists, of trade unionists, of several unions have been on strike, and the government used violence against them, killed some people, and now there's big protests, and now the mainstream trade unions are getting on board. They're calling for a general strike in the country, and so things are starting to move in Colombia.
So they're starting to be able to unify enough so that they're being successful
and fight back against this government, and that's the sort of the front lines against the Venezuelan revolution. But Venezuela and Colombia have very close ties.
Yes.
There's at least 1 million Colombians, if not 2, I think it might even be 2, that live in Venezuela.
Yeah.
So the ties are very close. So they see on one side of this imaginary line, this border, they see all the reforms, the changes that are taking place in Venezuela. And on the other side, you have this terrible repression. So of course people are going to get ideas from that, and there's going to be the beginnings of big mobilizations of the Colombian trade unionists and so on. So that's a really important spark of hope.
Oh my goodness, that's